I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Ken Reeves bringing you a tropical storm update, and that it is a tropical storm. We'll be talking about the first named storm in the Atlantic Basin here in just a few moments. But first I want to address the Eastern Pacific, which has been fairly active for a good portion of the week, but now is showing signs of weakening. We have Celia, which was out here, Category 5 at one point, now down to Category 2, and you can see it's just a shadow of its former self. Darby is in here. Again, Category 3 at one point, a major hurricane, now down to 2, and will continue to weaken. It may eventually find its way back up to the Mexican coast in a much weaker form and perhaps be a rain producer. But the main thing to be concentrating on right now is Alex, because that's the more immediate threat to Mexico, certainly to the Yucatan Peninsula and potentially through the Gulf of Mexico. Officially named here this morning at about 5 a.m. Eastern Time. You can see the circulation of Alex in the Western Caribbean. Not very organized presently, but certainly some very bold and bright areas of thunderstorms happening within the center or near the center of the storm itself. Take a look. I'm going to show you a recon from our GIS site here. Just kind of giving you an idea as the plane was flying in. It was encountering the darker green here is actually below the tropical storm force. But the lighter greens you see here are actually surface-based winds that they're sensing from the plane flying several thousand feet above the ocean surface. And they are encountering some winds there. Now, that can occasionally be messed up by rainfall, but those lighter greens you see here were separated from the rainfall, so they're actually sensing real winds away from any kind of heavier downburst of wind and rain. And so that gave them the impetus to actually name the storm. We have now kind of categorized it. We have been tracking this actually for a good portion of the week, waiting for it to actually gain some structure and strengthen. And we felt all along that the primary area of concern initially is going to be the Yucatan Peninsula. And that we can see here, the Yucatan is the area, and actually we're showing some weakening of that as well. As we zoom in a little bit, it actually weakens back down to a tropical depression crossing that land because it's not very organized. But as it comes back out, we do think there'll be opportunity for it to strengthen. And there is an interesting element of, well, while it still could be going west, there's probably two main concepts that could happen in this particular pattern. One which would drive it more to the west and head into Mexico or maybe South Texas, and another where the big steering currents of the upper atmosphere, the ridge north of it, could weaken enough that it would turn more to the north. And so probably there are two main scenarios that could actually happen, one that could take it to the west and one that could take it more to the north. More than likely, the central Texas coast is the least likely area that is kind of closer to the window that might actually get some influence from it. But nonetheless, the farther it comes up and away from land, the more chance it has to strengthen. And while we don't represent it necessarily as getting to hurricane strength, it can certainly do so as well. One other thing I want to show you back on this satellite picture, just for a second, is we're also studying this area out here off to the east of Puerto Rico. One thing I want to note to you is there is a big ridge of high pressure to the north, which is helping to steer this feature to the north and to the west. There's also a trough or a little dip in here, and you can see how the clouds are getting sheared and torn to the north and to the east from this particular area. That is indicative of that little trough in there, and will stop that feature in particular from developing, certainly in the near term. So again, here's our path taking it through the Hurricane Center's path, a very similar path, taking it up in through the Gulf, the Bay of Campeche, and into the western Gulf of Mexico, where at that point it may head toward Texas. Probably South Texas would be more likely than Central Texas. If it turns a little harder because the ridge weakens, it could still find itself up into the northern Gulf, and that would cause a lot of problems for the cleanup efforts, the human cleanup efforts that would be taking place in that area. Certainly would help maybe mix up the water and oil mixture just a little bit as well. In terms of what the models are saying, they're in pretty strong consensus coming into the Yucatan Peninsula and then kind of spread out a little bit. In fact, some of them say, okay, here it comes up, and then the ridge builds back and pushes it back into Mexico. There are still a few that kind of wander up. For you crazies out there that like to see which models are which, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on that. You can get a sense as to which models are taking it in which particular directions for your favorite models. The extrapolated motion takes way down here, never takes it back over the Bay of Campeche. I don't think anyone is really thinking that as well. In terms of strength, right now the models are forecasting just to be a tropical storm. There are a couple that are just tweaking it up into Category 1 status. You see some yellow dots showing up there as well. I think there is a good possibility the farther away it moves from land, it has the opportunity to get to hurricane status, and it's not too early for that as well. Just to give you some sense, in 2005, there was only one named storm by this point in that very, very active season. There ended up being two that month. One formed a little bit later as well. That was Brett. Arlene was the first one. But then keep in mind what happened after that. 5 storms, named storms, each in the months of July, August, and September, and 7 in October. So just because it's going to be an active season and we may only have one perhaps in June doesn't mean anything at this point, because it certainly there can be strong storms at this point. Just look back in 1957, Hurricane Audrey about this time was cranking through exactly the same area that we have the current storm Alex moving through as well, and that reached Category 4 strength before making landfall. A very destructive, powerful, in fact, the most powerful June hurricane ever. I think the main thing we're going to have to watch here over the weekend is the amount of rain and the damage that could be caused across the Yucatan Peninsula. I don't think wind is going to be that big of an issue, but rain certainly could, where you could have locally a foot of rain in some spots there, but generally we're looking for about 4 to 6 inches, and then it emerges out into the Bay of Campeche early in the week. You'll need to stay tuned to this spot for more tropical storm updates throughout the weekend. I'm meteorologist Ken Reeves.